Welcome to the Frontline Innovation Podcast, the voice of problem solvers. Innovation isn't just about ideals. It's about dismantling the barriers that stand between people and the solutions they actually need. This is where real human problems collide with real-world constraints, where innovators don't chase hype. They study people, break problems apart, and build solutions that actually work. Because the hardest part of innovation isn't creating something new. It's building useful fixes to people's problems and getting it into their hands. Each episode, we go inside that journey with leaders, designers, builders, and problem solvers doing the hard, often invisible work of making innovation real. I'm your host, William Reed. Let's get to work dismantling human problems. Welcome back to the Frontline Innovation Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Alicia Couri, founder and CEO of Audacious Concepts, a strategic advisor helping leaders elevate team performance in the face of emerging technology disruption and rapid change. A TEDx and international keynote speaker, Alicia equips executives with practical frameworks to align people, performance, and innovation. So teams don't just survive transformation, they scale through it. In this episode, we unpack the hidden friction inside of organizations and explore how understanding human intelligence, not just technology, can unlock performance, reduce conflict, and accelerate innovation. If you ever wonder why great ideas stall, this conversation is for you. Let's welcome Alicia to the show. So as we observe the world that we're in today, a lot of technology, a lot of modern capabilities. One of the interesting things is when you interact with these systems out in the world, sometimes there's friction. And it's just kind of interesting to take a step back and observe what that friction point is, or friction points. Everything from interacting with a telephone system to something on the web to the door handle. So I'd like to start off today just talking about any impressions of any design of anything, system, process, product that you interact with. Could be a toothbrush, could be the stairs, it could be that new mobile app. And it's something that just got your attention and say, you know what, that was interesting. I like that. I like the way whoever built that thing, that product or service or experience, I like the way they designed it. It was seamless. Or, man, that was horrible. I could not use that form on the website. It was awful. Or, you know what? It's kind of on the fence. So I think they made some good efforts, but here's some things that could be improved. So you have anything in mind?
That's a curveball. Anything specifically in mind? You know, what I will say is when you buy a product or a service, you want it to work. End of story. You want it to work. You want it to be as seamless as possible. And even though something specific doesn't come to mind immediately for me right now, as you ask me that question, the user experience of something is so important. And it's so important to have different in the building of it, in the construction of it, to have a lot of input from different sources. So I'm not in the user experience lane, but what we are going to be talking about today with like cognitive intelligence is something I don't think a lot of people understand. So even in the user experience, not understanding how their brains are wired to take action on something can also be a setback in developing those products and services. So I'm talking and I'm still trying to think of something because I know I was logging in. Oh my goodness, here we go. Logging in to certain portals. My son has this portal for the doctor. So he is my youngest now. He just turned 18, but we're still in that transition phase between the pediatrician and the big adult doctor, right? So the portal, every time I go onto the portal, I get an email that's saying you have a new message from the doctor. So I go into the portal, and every single time it is requesting, it says that my login information is incorrect. And then I get locked out of the portal, even though all my passwords are, I have them, and I probably shouldn't do this, but I have it auto-generated with a password protected software, so that I don't have to remember every single time, every single unique password. So I do use a password generated, a password saving software. So every single time it tells me the password is incorrect and I have to reset my password. I have to reset everything. That is frustrating, especially when you're busy, you're in the middle of the day, and the software doesn't work. So now you're frustrating the people trying to use what you're trying to share with them. And then I get into there and it has messages, and I go to click the messages and there's no updated message. There's no updated message. I'm like, why did I go through 10 minutes of frustration to get in here and there's nothing new?
Yes.
Like, I'm waiting to hear back from the doctor, but there was no updated message. So that, to me, when they're designing these portals for people to log in, what is happening where every single time I have to get a code sent to my email, I put in the code, then I come back, and then I have to reset everything just to get in. And then it's not even updated. So that, I have to say, is frustrating.
I love it. I love it. That's one of my frustration points too, especially if you get to log into maybe like 5 to 10 portals per day for different functions of your daily life. That it kind of adds up and compounds.
Yes. Yes.
So Alicia, so right now somebody's listening to what you just talked about, and they happen to be responsible for the system that you're trying to log into. So let's go into their mindset, and they're thinking, you know what? I feel your pain. I want to do something about it. So, and that's kind of the essence of innovation is somebody heard of a problem, they observed a problem, some friction, some challenges, some frustration, and they get into this mode of, we're going to be a problem solver, right? So at the end of the day, innovation is about problem solving. So let's think about that mindset of the person who just heard you. I know you heard people's frustrations as well. So we're going to get into that a little bit about, what inspired you. But just think about that mindset, that hearing something and saying, you know what, I'm going to go tackle that.
I'll tell you something. They love to say user error. Yeah. My product works. Yeah. This is user error. You're not using it properly.
So it's almost like having to have the empathy to say, you know what, let me investigate that further. Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's our system. Let me go do something about it.
Yes. I hear that a lot. And I admit to sometimes being the user that is the error. And I would admit it. I'd say, you know what? Yeah, I didn't fully read the instructions, or I didn't. So yeah, that's on me. But I am honest with myself in that way, again, because I understand how my brain approaches things to solve problems, to take action, and to strive. So I understand how my brain, that process works in my brain. So if I come back and it's not working, I know, okay, I skipped some steps. I didn't really read properly. Let me go back and pay more attention to details. That, however, is not the same as you get a message in your email, you go to the website, and every single time, it's telling me that my password is incorrect. I don't understand what that is. So if you are responsible for building something and you're getting the same complaint over and over again, then it's not user error. Something is not working right with the software. By the way, I don't even know who to complain about that. Because sometimes when I call the doctor's office themselves, I said, "Oh, I try to log on to the portal," because that's the other thing, logging on to the portal to make the appointments, and it's not working. And they're like, "Yeah, we have some problems with that." They're not even like, it's like, what are we going to do? We don't know. Yeah, People complain about it, but they're not complaining, sending, elevating it or escalating it to the company that's providing the service. Doesn't seem like they are, because they're just saying, oh yeah, patients end up calling us and they complain about the thing. It's kind of clunky, and it doesn't really speak well to the other parts of this. And listen, I spent 5 hours one night because he was writhing in pain. This was just over the New Year's Day holiday, writhing in pain, trying to get a telehealth visit from about 1:00 the afternoon. I didn't get on a video call with the doctor until almost 10:00 that night. I think it was like 9:30 that night, because the system just kept sending me to make the appointment online, and then they'll send me a link to my phone. Well, I never got the link. Eventually, the doctor had to text me and say, what's going on? I keep seeing that you're trying to get an appointment and it's not coming through. What is happening? And I said, I'm never getting a link to actually join the telehealth call. She's like, oh yeah, they have this problem where it doesn't really speak to this system really well. And so she ended up texting me and then saying, okay, I'm going to text you a direct link to get on the call with me. We had to do that 3 times over the course of 2 days just to be able to get that telehealth visit. So when you're trying to do something that makes it easier for the customer, for your client, for your patient, but the tech doesn't work and it's not synced and it's not speaking well to each other, then that's a problem, because you end up frustrating the patient or the client even more. We ended up having to go to the emergency room anyway, which I could have done at 2:00 in the afternoon. I could have just picked myself up and gone to the emergency room instead of waiting till 10:00 at night to now go to the emergency room, because we couldn't get the health visit done, which kept trying.
That really point out the opportunity here. So for the people who are building these solutions, if they're hearing this over and over and over again, are they going to take responsibility to actually do something about it? Because one thing if it happened like in January, but then you say, well, that was January 3 years ago. I'm still using their system. It's still clunky. Like, whoa, that means there's another unmet frustration, challenges sitting out there, piling up with other systems that are less than ideal. And the question is, anybody going to raise their hand and say, you know what? It's our responsibility to go out there and improve this. And I love what you said earlier. There's a word you use system. So when we start to think about innovation and then solving problems, we really want to know who's going to stand up, lead the pack, to say we understand how the system works and we're going to improve it. So you won't be having these same issues with the log on or getting your appointment faster. And I think that's really what the world is really craving right now. Our things are just to work, seamless.
You want it to work. Yeah. If you're so excited about bringing innovation into your space to make the customer, well, it's not just to make the customer experience better, but to alleviate some of the burden on you as well, right? It's supposed to be twofold. And if when I call into the nurses and they're saying, oh yeah, we're having this problem, but nobody's actually doing anything about it, how does that solve anyone's challenges? Because they just keep pushing this tech on you. They push it in the voice recording. Yeah, just send us, say XYZ and we'll send you a text. While I say XYZ, they send me a text, and then the text doesn't actually go anywhere, right? It doesn't solve my immediate problem. And it's just piles on the frustration. And now I have to call them back and wait on hold again because the link you sent me is broken or doesn't work. And now I have to sit there and I have to wait through waiting for someone to answer the phone again. And, we only have certain times of the day when someone's actually available to pick up a phone call. So it can get a little bit frustrating on the client, patient side of things versus your side, where you're just like, hey, we put the system in place. use the system we put in place.
Yeah.
And not recognizing the system don't work. So
Yes.
what do we do?
Yes.
What do we do?
And then I'd love to like zoom out a little bit and, really kind of a broad term to see how you think about the word innovation. Because I think a lot of people, they gravitate toward the technology, whereas new technology, new capabilities, that's innovation. And they really are missing the boat here when you think about the full scope of it. Because it could be, let's improve the experience, which may not require any technology at all. It could involve organizational change, a process change, switching the way the furniture is in the office space.
Feng shui.
Yes. So many different ways. And I think a lot of leaders of these companies are just defaulting to, well, let's throw some new tech at it, as opposed to think about other ways to solve it. If you can, something you can just do and just hand me something, as opposed to sending me a link to a text to a website, it might be better just to do that. So I want to make sure the people really understand this broad scope of the word innovation, right? It's not tied necessarily to technology. It's the way you think, the way you try to figure out a way to solve problems differently and be more innovative. But I really want to hammer home this is, if unmet needs are still showing up in complaints, that's more and more signals to us that we need to do something different, and just throwing tech at it, not necessarily the full scope of what innovation can encompass.
I love that question because it also reminds me of creativity. Innovation and creativity are sort of, I think, siblings. And people tend to think creativity means artistry, and it's not. So creativity, innovation, those are built into our wiring. We're all wired for creativity. We're all wired for innovation. It's how we define and frame it that limits us.
Yeah.
And so if we start just thinking of how our thought processes and how we do things throughout every single day, anytime you deviate from the norm, that's innovation. That's creativity. The minute you deviate from doing something the way you've always done it, you've now stepped into innovation. And that happens when a baby is learning to walk. Yeah. That's innovation to that child. They've never done that before. That's an innovative opportunity for them. I had one of my children, I have 3 children, crawled for probably like 3 weeks before she started walking. She was probably like, I didn't like this too much. This dragging on the floor thing, it's not for me.
Try something different.
So at 9 months, she was up and walking. Yeah. Right? So if we can look at creativity and innovation through the lens of just our daily lives, how we do things, then we can see ourselves as creative beings and as innovative beings, and it just does not belong to a select few.
I love that.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
It does, because a child's like, you know what? Crying to get attention is wearing thin. I'm just get out and go over there and get that thing myself.
Get that cookie myself. I'm just going to get up and get that cookie. That was an innovative thought, innovative idea, innovative action, because they had never done it before. That's what innovation is. It's something that you haven't done before. Not that it hasn't been done before, but something you haven't done before is innovative to you. Now, if you're thinking on the broader scope of mankind and how can we innovate something that hasn't been done before, then that might take teamwork. That would take other voices in the room. There is not a single person on the face of the planet that innovated anything alone, that created anything by themselves. God was the original innovator and creator of everything, but everyone else had to have partnership, had to have ideas from other people, had to have input in order to create and innovate. So we need each other. We need other people in order for, even if we have a great idea, in our head, we still need resources in order to execute that. So that's why I love the work that I do with teams and teaming and helping them understand how their brain actually operates, so that when you're doing something that's innovative, when you're doing something that's creative, when you're bringing something to life, or even if you're just trying to get a job done, right? How can we most effectively work together? How can we do this together in a way that gets us to the result that we want faster with less friction? We started talking about friction. Faster with less friction, and get the job done. So that's the lane that I love to be in, because reducing friction when you're working within teams is how innovation is able to accelerate, not through the use of technology, but just through the use of our own brain power, which is the highest technology that there is, because we haven't even explored, how much percentage of our brain we use, like 3 to 5% of our brains, right? We haven't even been able to explore the vast application or capability or capacity of what we have in our brain. We're looking at AI and we're looking at tech as, ooh, this is so great. We haven't even dug deep enough, scratched the surface of what is inside each and every one of us. So if I can highlight just a small portion for some people that they've never heard of or never ever experienced before, or don't have the language around to articulate it, then that's my mission, is to really help people dive a little bit deeper into this thing that they have, that is the greatest technology ever created in mankind. How do we use that more efficiently and effectively to get results?
Well, forget artificial intelligence, human intelligence. Boy,
human intelligence hasn't even been explored.
Yes. So, Alicia, you're out there in the world. You're sitting in the coffee shop, and you're overhearing these conversations. And then you go to another coffee shop, and you're overhearing some more conversations. Then you're talking to some friends, you're hearing some conversations, and you keep hearing this overriding theme over and over and over again. And so you keep hearing something that initially gets you to say, you know what, I'm gonna start my own business. I'm gonna offer some services. I'm gonna offer some value to the world. So let's kind of unpack this whole problem identification, this understanding of a problem before you got to the point to say, you know what, I'm gonna go in business. I'm gonna go provide this service. I'm gonna go help people. So let's talk about this understanding. A part of this journey of innovation is, what kind of problems are you hearing out there in the world that you say, you know what, that caught my attention?
So the problems from the perspective of the work that I do is really around conflict and reducing friction. So a lot of things that are actually conflict aren't always seen as conflict. And what I mean by that is, sometimes I might be hearing some leader talking about resistance. Why we're trying to roll this thing out, but we're getting resistance. Well, resistance is a form of conflict, and resistance is a form of friction that needs to be addressed. Because what ends up happening is, if the elephant in the room is not addressed, it doesn't come out, and you say, hey, I noticed that we have this mandate, we have this initiative, and a few of you here are pushing back on it, but you're not actually pushing back directly to us. You're pushing back inside conversations. You're pushing back in in Slack chats. I wouldn't say water cooler, because not everybody is back at work, and not everybody is gathering anymore like they used to. But in Slack chats or on WhatsApp, there are these underground conversations happening that's quietly building resistance across the teams. And so that kind of conflict needs to be addressed. And if you're a leader that is thinking that it'll just work itself out, we're just going to keep pushing it forward and it'll work itself out, that's when you end up in bigger problems later on, and then wondering, well, what happened? We had such a great idea and it seemed like it would work, or it worked in the pilot when we did it with a small group of people, and then we rolled it out to more people, and then, it just collapsed. We don't understand. Well, that's because you didn't address the resistance early on when you first started hearing about it. And that's where psychological trust and safety come in, because people don't feel safe enough to speak up. That's where you're seeing resistance and what we call, well, I was reading, it's not from me, it's from Cy Wakeman. She calls it the BMWs, the bitching, whining, and moaning. The BMWs that come driving into the office. That's when that, she calls it organization. I'm trying to remember the term. It's there's so many things that are popping in my head, but it's waste. It is emotional waste. That's the name of it. That's what she calls it. So it's Dr. Cy Wakeman. So she calls it emotional waste. And she says that 2.5, on average, 2.5 hours of every day per employee is spent in emotional waste.
Ooh, that's a lot of time.
That's a lot of money.
Ooh.
That's a lot of money that's being wasted. That's not on anybody's a line item. It's not a line item in a budget. It's money that's actually being wasted away that you can't track. Like at the end of the day, when you're saying, okay, we didn't hit our numbers, we didn't hit our results, what happened? And then you push either technology, or you put people on performance improvement plans, or you do all these other things without recognizing the emotional waste that came from resistance at the beginning, that could have been handled differently if we understood how to build trust and psychological safety within the teams, within the organization. If they understood how people naturally resist, how their brains are naturally wired for resistance. Because sometimes the natural wiring, when I talk about cognitive intelligence, that natural wiring, there's a natural resistance that is built into some people's brains. And the only way for it to be recognized is through emotion. So they think it's an attitude problem or an emotional problem when it's not. So sometimes things are being incorrectly classified as emotional resistance, attitude problems, when it's not an attitude problem. And I'll give you a really easy example. I shared this in one of my videos recently. And I was working with this organization, and two of them were cognitively, and I'll explain cognitive in a minute if you give me a second.
Yes.
Were cognitively predisposed to conflict. They had this, one person had their numbers were way up high up here, and one person's numbers were way down here, like there was a big gap between the two numbers. And so there was a natural resistance, natural conflict there to start with. But the only way that they can express that is through their words and through their actions. And so it ended up becoming very personal. It became, you are not doing what it is I tell you to do. You're being belligerent. You're being, you're being, well, there were some words.
Yes, I can
imagine. Why can't you just do it the way I tell you to do it? Why can't you just do this thing this way? Well, the way their brain operates, there was a natural resistance to doing that thing. but they couldn't articulate it because they didn't know. And this other person is just seeing them as being wrong. And so when we started working together and we did this assessment, it's called the Kolbe assessment. It's Kolbe. When we did this assessment, and I was able to show them the natural opportunity for, or potential for conflict between how you took action on this and how they took action on it, then they were like, oh. So then the whole conversation changed, because it was no longer an attitude problem or a resistance problem that was, you don't want to do this, or you're just being a belligerent employee. Now the conversation was, all right, how can we support the way you naturally do this if we need this thing to get done? How can we support that happening so that both of us can get what we need done to do our jobs? Because naturally, this is something that your brain doesn't do easily. So when we talk about conation and Kolbe, what conation is, it's the third part of how your brain operates to problem solve, strive, and take action. So we have our cognitive brain, which is our thinking brain. So that's where our skill set lies. Okay. And that's where we can build skills. We have our affective brain, which is our emotional mind. So we hear about IQ, that's cognitive. We hear EQ, that's affective. And then there's this cognitive intelligence, which is another part of the executive function of your brain and your prefrontal cortex. That is how you naturally take action, problem solve, and strive. So this is the doing part of your brain. So you can think about something, you can feel how you want to do it, but when you're actually going to take action on it, that's the cognitive side of your brain that activates. So we measure this. We have an assessment tool that measures it, and it's measured on a scale of 1 to 10. And there are 3 zones that we measure it in. So the first zone is 1 to 3. That's a reaction zone. So that's a resistance zone. That's a zone where, I'm not going to touch that, because the cognitive part of your brain is attached to your mental energy. And so if you're doing something in the 1 to 3 zone, and it really requires an 8 or 9, you're burning your mental energy and you get exhausted a lot faster, a lot quicker by doing things like that. So then we have a mid-range zone from 4 to 6, and that's how you accommodate those actions. So that's something like someone's asking you to do something and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it, and I'll do it this way. You're asking me to do it this way? Okay, I'll do it this way. So they accommodate those actions. So that's the first one was a counteraction. This one is a reaction, because so I misspoke earlier. It's not the 1 to 3 is a counteraction. The 4 to 6 is a reaction. And then the 7 to 10 is initiate. So this is where you start your problem solving from. Nice. So we have 4 different actions that we measure. It's how you gather and share information, how you look at systems and processes, how you deal with risk, uncertainty, and change, and how you interact with your physical, tangible space. So those are the 4 actions that we are measuring. So with the 2 people I talked about earlier, in that system and process, the way their brain sees pattern and systems, one was in that counteracting zone, one was a 2, and the other one was an 8. So that's a natural friction between those 2, right? One needs system things to be processed. They need lists. They need things to be checked off of that list to know. They need closure. The other one works very randomly, and their systems is a non-system, right? They adapt to systems. So if you have a 1 to 20 step process, they will skip over steps, because their brain they're just seeing what the end result is, and they're just getting to that end result. they're not going to follow every step. So one person that was 8 wanted the person that was 2 to follow every step to get to the result. And he's like, oh, no, I'm not doing all of that. I'm just going to give you this. And she was always like, no, you can't do that. And why are you doing that? And he's like, I don't see what the big deal is. You're getting what you want. What is the problem? Right? So there are these natural resistances and opportunities for conflict within teams. But if you're having the wrong conversations about it, you can't get it resolved.
This is huge.
I know I said a lot.
This is huge, right? Because this is so common, right? Small businesses, large, big organizations, all across the board are experiencing this every day. And we have a lot of managers who are not equipped to even think about what you're talking about right here. They're thinking about, right, hey, just get it done. Why don't you guys work it out? And they have these very draconian, very standard ways of dealing with it.
Yeah. So that's how the leader dealt with these two. Just work it out. But they didn't have enough information to work it out because it became personal.
Which
they
is
didn't
bad
know how
for
to switch that conversation.
Yeah.
And that I just touched about interpersonal conflict. What about conflict within the work that you're doing that you should not be doing? Because I talked about mental energy. Yeah. How about you being in a job that is draining your mental energy and your brain is under stress and strain every day because of the work that you're doing? So I talked earlier about me skipping, missing stuff, because when it comes to gathering and sharing information, I'm a number 3 on that list. So give me the high level, give me the bullet points. So I know I'll skim through and read. I won't read every word that's there. I'll kind of skim things. So if I end up making a mistake because I skimmed, then I know that's on me. And I know, okay, let me go back and try to read this through, because I know that it's going to be a little bit more energy draining for me. I set aside the right amount of time for me to do it. And then I have to pull myself out of it before I completely tank. But there could be conflict within your own role of what you're doing every day. I've seen CEOs and leaders having to be that futuristic, innovative, driven, driving the work forward and doing this stuff. And they're naturally built. So when we look at risk, uncertainty, and change, they're naturally built to resist risk. They're naturally built to stabilize things, but they're being asked to drive and jump into things that might seem risky for them. And so every day they're in that job, they're under a tremendous amount of stress and not really understanding why. And they're irritated and they're short-tempered with people. But it's not because others aren't doing their job. It's because they are in the wrong role. The way the role is designed is not right for them. So if you have a leader, a CEO of a business that is a stabilizer, their role is not to drive business forward or to innovate in that way. Their role is to keep everything working and moving and not get into risk and not get into things that are, they could be in a role where stability is success.
Yeah.
Right?
And I get back to how they set the mission, right? We're going to be very, very conservative over a long period of time. We're going to be here for decades for our customers.
Correct.
Versus the other organization is like, we're going to be in and out in 3 years.
We're just pushing. Let's hit that valuation number that we want, and then we're out. Right? So there are different types of CEOs. There are different types of leadership. But if you don't understand that about yourself, you could be putting yourself into a situation that causes you a lot of stress. So with this tool, we're able to help you see if you're in the right role for you, for how you are, how to build your team to be most effective, how to understand your team members, and really structure your organization for that, for high performance. And I don't mean high performance like an F1 car, like it has to go faster. Like high performance, meaning you're hitting your targets, you're hitting your goals. People are performing to the level that you expect them to perform. I had one owner of a company come to me and say, I know I have A players, but they're just not operating to the level that I know they can. And when we did these assessments with them, they're like, now we see why. Now we understand why. We had to tweak some roles. We had to shift some people around, but now they can actually step into that because now they understand themselves better, and now they understand their roles better, and they can operate within that role more effectively. That's high performance to me.
Yeah, you're guiding more intentional change for a very specific reason. Because if you misunderstand what the problem is, you're going to be just guessing at it and keep getting more frustrated. You have this huge team just constantly pointing fingers, thinking it's all personal. But the thing is, it's affecting the bottom line.
Something under the surface. Yeah. Under the surface, yeah. Because this cognitive part of your mind impacts communication. It impacts mental energy. It impacts how you take action on things. It impacts so many foundational things about how we just live, how we operate our lives. I've done this with some leaders that say, can we do this with my spouse? Can we do this with my children? And I'm like, yes, we can. Yes. So your family operates even better, right? Everybody understands who is best at something and can give them those tasks to do. Because like my daughter is high in Implementer, which is about the space and tangibles. Anything she can get her hands on, she's really good at building and creating and stuff. So anything that has to do with moving stuff around or building something, I'm grabbing her because I don't want to have to do all of that, but not just want, because that's an affect. But my brain doesn't have the capacity, the mental energy to sustain building for a long period of time.
And I can see how that can be very frustrating for a manager trying to force you to do it. It's not that they don't want to. It's not that
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I've run out of mental space for that. One of the I know we're getting close on time, but let me do this with you for a minute. Do you have something to write on? And everybody in the audience can do this.
Yes.
Right? And I think I've done this with you before. Well, yes. Maybe. Write your first and last name for me. Like just write it on a piece of paper. Okay. I don't know if you can show it to camera, if it'll show up, but first and last name. Right. Okay. We can't see it, but now put the pen in your other hand and write your first and last name. Right. Immediately. What did you do?
She making me work.
But immediately I heard, what did I hear? What did I hear?
The groan.
You probably don't even realize that you moaned and you groaned and you grumbled and you complained.
You want me to do something different?
That's the first level of stress. Yes. Right. That's the first level. So if you're telling your team to do something and the first thing you hear, that is that emotional friction I'm talking about. That's that 2.5 hours of waste, emotional waste that happens. Because what are they going to do? They're going to leave your office. They're going to complain to the person next door. They're going to slack somebody. They're going to start just whining. And after 20 minutes, them dumping that out, then they try to get it done. But was the result as good as when you wrote with your dominant hand? When you wrote, it was not. It was not as good. It took you longer to do it, right? So if we can get people to align more and more with how their cognitive brain operates in achieving the goal, because that's what we want, the goal achieved, then people will work faster. They'll have less grumbling, moaning, and complaining because it'll be right in alignment with how their brain operates. The results will be higher quality. So who doesn't want that in their business? Faster, higher quality, less friction.
Can you
You've
imagine?
just cut that 2.5 hours down. You've just saved yourself money. You just put money back into your profit column.
I'm trying to think now, the next board meeting say, we're about to add an extra, so you got like 10,000 employees. We're about to add thousands of hours per week extra to help innovate, to beat our competitor. And they say, oh my God, at the 6 months, you guys are crushing it. How you coming up with these new ideas? How you getting all this extra time? And you thinking, we freed them
because we
from
put
the
people
moment.
in the right place.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
also
even
thinking
in hiring, sorry, go ahead.
I was thinking about the performance. Now, if I have two employees step side by side, and like you said, one likes to process information differently or do, another one wants to do the checklist, that can really help inform how do you consider both of these for like performance improvement or for like pay raises later. If you don't know this, you're going to judge them differently, and one is keep getting promoted, and the other one isn't. But maybe
because they can't, because you're saying they can't follow the process.
Right.
Your rubric, your evaluation process is flawed.
It's flawed, yeah.
Yeah, and now this person is feeling frustrated. Now they could be a very valuable employee for you, but you're holding them down because you don't even realize you have them in the wrong role, or you're giving them the wrong tasks to actually see them elevate and shine. So this work, I am passionate about it. So you asked me earlier if I'm sitting in a coffee shop and I hear something. I am passionate about helping people really understand how their brains are wired to operate, what makes them successful, and helping them see how to protect their mental energy. And this is the last little illustration that I'll give you when it comes to this is, poker chips, right?
Yeah.
So when I do workshops and facilitate workshops with people, I typically bring these 4 different colored poker chips because they represent the 4 different action modes that we talk about. And I give everybody based on their number. So like for me, I would get 3 red because that's how I process information. It's a 3. So I get 3 red, I get 4 blue. That's my systems and processes, how I follow process. I get 8 green, and I'll get 4 yellow. Now, suppose I have to do something that requires 8 red. So I hand in my 3 chips. Yeah. Now, if I was betting, I hand in my 3 chips. Where am I getting the other 5 chips from? Where am I getting the other 5 red chips?
There's a problem.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
What people typically do is they keep pushing. They keep pushing, trying to push through. And what they end up doing is burning out all their mental energy. So I burn out my blues, I burn out my green, I burn out my yellow, and I still didn't get that thing done. Yeah. I burn it out. Now I'm exhausted. Now I'm irritated. I'm irritable. And now I go home and my kids are asking, what's for dinner? Like, I don't have a clue. I have nothing. My brain can't even put 2 ideas together for food. And that's what's happening to people every single day. They're spending all their chips by noon, right? Yes. Doing the wrong things. And then they're like, oh, I hate this job. Oh, I'm so burnt out. Oh, well, maybe we need to figure out why this is happening to you day after day after day. And start aligning the work that you're doing to how your brain operates. Start aligning the people around you to each other. Start hiring the right people for the right role, not just based on their resume, but based on how their brain actually functions. And their resume. Yes. Yes. And their experience and skills. Because your resume is your IQ, your cognitive. Other assessment tests that people do for hiring, they're affective. They're around emotional intelligence and around attitude and around, how culture, how they're going to fit into our culture, that kind of stuff. But then there's this cognitive intelligence piece. Colby is the only company that is 100% cognitive. So if you've not heard of it, if you've not seen it, I would suggest checking it out.
So what's been like the biggest surprise? I'm just processing all these things. I'm thinking about over my career, all these different organizations I've been a part of, all the different conflicts and friction points. I never heard anybody talk like this at this level. I don't think, I would say, I don't think people actually stopped and took the time to dismantle the problem.
It's
They
not
just kind of Band-Aid
understood.
over it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what's the big surprise?
Because the cognitive part operates subconsciously. It's at a level that you're not consciously aware of. So a lot of people they say, "Oh, I know me. I know how I am. I know." Well, we have a general idea of ourselves through historical and allegorical data, not empirical data, right? We have data that comes from hearing about ourselves from other people, belief systems that we've built up, hearing about our childhood and who we were as children. We have ways that we do things that we think, yeah, that's who I am, not recognizing there have been skills that you have built over time. That might not be your natural way of doing it, but you've built skills around certain things over time. So you can do it. But is it the best way for you to do it? Is it that natural way for you to do it? That your brain has actually been designed to do it this way? We don't know for sure. When I took this assessment, it answered so many things for me because I was really bad in school and I couldn't understand why. I'm like, I think I'm smart, but everybody calls me stupid because I can't do things the way the teacher is telling me to do it. And that's that 3 in how I gather and share information, that 3 fact finder, because school is all about being able to absorb information and regurgitate information and follow process. Bring in your homework on time, all these things. Well, when your brain isn't wired in that way, you struggle. This is why I love doing it with kids who are struggling in school. When they recognize, oh, it's not because I'm stupid, because that's the first thing people tell you, you're stupid. It's not because I'm stupid, it's because my brain operates a little differently and I just need the right tools so that I can be successful in this. Last year I worked with some kids who are in a facility for abandoned kids. Some of them are young teenage moms and they're doing their GEDs. They're trying to get their, still going to school, get their education, but they're all in this facility. And the head of the facility, she was there while I was doing this training with these kids. And she said, I have been trying to get them to do work all wrong. Thank you. Because I've been pushing them to study the way I studied. Because she is a long line fact finder. She is like a 7 or 8 fact finder and an 8 in follow through in that process, systems and process. And some of these kids are 2s and 3s in fact finder and 8s in quick start, which is that need for risk and uncertainty and change and just innovating and being very creative. Or they're high in implementer, which is all they want to do is go outside and play basketball, or they want to go outside and build stuff. And I need them in here, like studying. And I'm like, that's not how their brain works. You gotta give them what their brain needs first in order for them to then study the way you want, not the way you want, but the way their brain will accept it the best. Some kids need to cram the night before. I was a kid that needed to cram the night before. I couldn't study work 5 days in advance and then go do a test. I needed the information like quickly, like right now, and then dump it out. Right? So it's how, when we understand this about our children, when we understand this about our teammates, when we understand this about our work, our colleagues at work, man, it changes the game so significantly.
I love this because we're talking about, really dismantling the problem at its roots, going beyond just the surface level symptoms, which really allow you the ability to go out there and intervene in places to really make these big impacts. So I'm hearing the personal space. I'm hearing about the workspace, the societal space. This is a lot of areas that we can make changes here. I mean, it's like
but in the workspace, it can be very expensive if you don't understand this. You know, you could be hiring the wrong people. You could be working in the wrong tasks. It can get pretty pricey.
I always tell people one of the signals that, you got a problem here, because a lot of times executives try to wash over it like, yeah, we're doing good. We'll push through. And it's like, but why are we hearing all these signals for these frustrations, complaints, the water cooler and Slack? People won't just randomly do it, right? There's a certain amount of, frustration you just naturally do. But it seems to be more than it should be. So why is that?
Why we have burnout? So many cases of burnout now.
Yes.
Well, that and the lack of psychological safety and the lack of trust, and there are other things, of course. There are other things that lead to people being burnt out. But this is one of those foundational pieces that when people understand, it helps them regulate their energy so they don't get to that burnout stage. But yeah, there are other issues within organizations that we can also work in helping them work through when it comes to things like psychological safety and trust. Comes to visioning and making sure the team is all on the same page, because the company might have a vision, but every team needs to have its own vision as well. And each person needs to have that buy-in on that team of the vision and how behavior how behaviors are operating within our team that now links up to the main vision of the company. But when you just point to one main vision and the team, everybody works kind of hodgepodge, kind of in there, interpreting that main vision differently, that's when you start having problems as well inside your teams in your organization, because the team doesn't have a shared vision, mission, goal of this team, behaviors of this team. How do we respect one another? How do we interact with each other? So those are even things to layer on top of when you understand the cognitive intelligence. Now, how do we behave together towards this vision, which is ultimately going to get us to the main vision? So
pretty powerful.
It's a lot of stuff.
Hey, if you were in the room right now and there are like 100 founders or CEOs of company and say, hey, you guys just heard this conversation, raise your hand if you heard of any level of depth or understanding this problem and known ways to dismantle these type of problems. Raise your hand if you're anywhere familiar with this. Of 100 people, how many people do you think will raise their hand?
Wow. I don't know. Probably 5%.
Right.
I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking, right? A lot of people just literally have not heard about this.
Yeah.
And they try to make do. So when we talk about innovation and really kind of getting at the heart and core of what you need for your team to do, for what your business need to do to deliver for customers, right? At the end of the day, you're in business doing something, you're serving your customers, and you want to serve your customers better while still making the money, right? Staying in business, hitting all your targets. So if something's holding you back, but you can't identify what it is, maybe this is something that you want to investigate and, reach out to Alicia and say, you know what, let's have a further conversation about this, because we never thought about the problem in this manner, this systemic.
Right. Oh, we didn't think we had a problem until I heard you. We thought this was just par for the course, right? We just thought this is the cost of doing business. Yeah. I've heard some people say the turnover, they have high turnover. That's just the cost of doing business in this industry.
Wow. And that's something.
It's like maybe you can be innovative and change that.
Yes.
Why can't you be an innovator and change that? Yeah. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be.
So I think there are a lot of opportunity here for anybody who's leading the team and anybody who's thinking there's something holding you back from really kind of accomplishing what you want. So this has been very powerful, Alicia. And oh man, we can go on for so long.
I know our time is up, but I appreciate you. I thank you for giving me the space and the opportunity to share what's on my heart and the passion that I have for helping people really understand a part of themselves that they don't really understand really well or even know about, because the greatest tool of a leader is self-awareness. That is one of the greatest tools that you can ever have, is more self-awareness, because then you can really start using your brain more and more, using more parts of that brain to get where you want to go. So I appreciate you for inviting me for this conversation.
Fantastic. That has been another episode of the Frontline Innovation Podcast. Thank you for your time. Innovation doesn't end with a great idea or a product on the shelf. It continues through the realization that someone's problem was fixed after they used the solution. If this episode helped you see a problem more clearly or think differently about how solutions reach the front lines, share it with someone who's doing that work alongside you. And if you're building, designing, selling, or supporting solutions meant to last, subscribe to the Frontline Innovation Podcast, the voice of problem solvers. Because progress isn't driven by ideals alone. It's built by those willing to dismantle problems and do the work that follows. Until next time, stay on the front line and go dismantle a human problem.